I've talked previously on the podcast about the woke military, about Defense Secretary Austin, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, and their absurd wokeness. A wokeness, by the way, that is quite likely to undermine military morale, undermine the esprit de corps, that is the essential basis of any kind of team, and this is a fighting team. And it now appears that the same woke ideology is permeating the defense contractors. Let's think about who these defense contractors are. People like Raytheon and Lockheed. These are people who get billions of dollars in federal contracts. And it turns out that they're deploying at least some of this money to these woke training sessions, basically re-education camps. Now, Christopher Rufo, who's been all over the critical race theory in schools and colleges, but he's also been ferreting out how these corporations do it. And he's got a recent article in which he talks about Raytheon. So Raytheon's CEO, this guy named Greg Hayes, has been organizing seminars centered on the concept of intersectionality. And the basic idea here is that if you're, let's say, Latino, you're oppressed one way because you're a person of color, but if you're female, Latina, you're a twofer. You got double credentials. And if you're a Latina and a female and you also happen to be gay, then you're kind of climbing up the victim's totem pole. You get the top spot. And who are the worst? Who's at the bottom? Well, it turns out, quote, white, straight Christian men who are supposed to, in these seminars, quote, recognize their privilege. I want to read from one of these seminars. It says that recognizing your privilege means recognizing when other voices are more important than your own. Now, you might say, more important, why? More important because they have better ideas about military strategy? No. More important because they have a better understanding of what the military is all about? No. More important solely because they're supposedly more oppressed. So you're supposed to, quote, be sure to amplify others instead of attempting to speak for them. This is what Raytheon, this is the, I think, poisonous philosophy that Raytheon is pushing on its employees. It tells all the employees you have to identify your own race, and you've got to silence yourself if you are a member of the privileged group, and give the floor to people who are oppressed. Now, Raytheon recognizes that all of this preferentialism might create, quote, discomfort for whites, but it goes, that's a fraction of what is experienced by your victimized colleagues who are, quote, who are exhausted, mentally drained, frustrated, stressed, barely sleeping, scared, and overwhelmed. So apparently Raytheon has this kind of view that those of us who are minorities or people of color, we are just like, we can barely function. You know, we're so tormented by racism that we can barely operate in America. I mean, this is in a different age, all of this would be subjects of comedy. Raytheon also segregates its employees by race and identity groups. They have a little picture for Pride Month, and they've got this little guy who looks, you know, basically like as thin as a palm tree, and he has the kind of super gay look in his eyes, and it's sort of like, again, what does this have to do with the military? Nothing. Finally, and I think this is pernicious, Raytheon explicitly instructs employees to, quote, oppose equality. Oppose equality. Why? Because equality means treating people the same. They're against that. Instead of equality, they want, quote, equity. This is the new thing, the new term. Equity, quote, focuses on the equality of the outcome. So here we go. You know, you have a race, and if some group comes out ahead, that's inequitable because evidently everyone's supposed to come out the same. And one can only imagine, I mean, if you think about it, war is the ultimate form of competition. War is ultimately about winners and losers, and that fact can't be camouflaged. So how discouraging it is to see that these premier defense industries are caught up in this destructive, self-defeating ideology. And finally, Raytheon has a collection of recommended resources. They encourage white employees to participate in programs like defund the police, reparations. I love this one. Decolonize your bookshelf. Decolonize your bookshelf. What does that mean? I've got the Norton Anthology of Collected Poems on my bookshelf. I assume that has a lot of poems by people like Emily Dickinson and Shakespeare. Do I need to decolonize my bookshelf, you morons? Do you even know what you're talking about? And so this is all just very dispiriting. And it shows the penetration of the left, even in institutions that had been traditionally considered conservative. Very worrisome development. Kudos to Christopher Rufo for exposing it. And if the Republicans in Congress had any sense, they would be all over this stuff, conducting hearings, asking questions, demanding to know what's going on and to what extent, because all of this has to do with our country's safety and security.